the end of last year, during Zelensky's previous visit to Washington, Zelensky received a hero's welcome.
Thank you so much.
Watching his speech from the balcony, I counted 13 standing ovations before I stopped keeping track. One senator told me he could not remember a time in his 3 decades on Capitol Hill when a foreign leader received such an admiring reception.
Thank you so much.
This time around, however, the atmosphere has changed. Assistance to Ukraine has become a sticking point in the debate over the federal budget.
What I heard in there, let me just choose my words carefully given the classified briefing, but I'll just say this. I mean, if there's a path, if there's some path to victory in Ukraine, I didn't hear it today. And I also heard that there was going to be no end to the funding requests. So I think this latest request for, what is it, 24 billion? That is not the end. They made that very clear. It's not close to the end. So I would just say what we're basically told is buckle up and get out your checkbook. Of course, it's not our checkbook. And can I just say, by the way, I'm sick and tired of hearing all of these people in that room for the administration applaud Congress for being so generous. This isn't our money, for heaven's sake. It's not our, we're not being generous. It's the American people's money. And they spent 115 billion of it. And so far they have basically nothing to show for it.
One of Zelensky's foreign policy advisors urged him to call off the trip in September, warning that the atmosphere was too fraught.
We have Zelensky in town and he's going around begging and pleading for the American people's hard-earned tax dollars. At the same time, we learn of the news that more money laundering is happening over in Ukraine. And Ukraine is such a long, drawn-out war, and we know what it is. It's all for profit, and it needs to end. I'm calling for it to end, and I'm standing my ground really hard with my voting card, saying I will not vote for any funding because it's nothing but corruption, and Zelensky has Joe Biden basically on the hook.
Congressional leaders declined to even let Zelensky deliver a public address at Capitol Hill.
Zelensky elected to Congress? Is he our president? I don't think I have to commit anything. I have questions for him. Where's the accountability on the money we already spent? What is the plan for victory? I think that's what the American public wants to know. Look.
His aides tried to arrange an in-person appearance for him on Fox News and an interview with Oprah Winfrey. None of them came through. Instead, Zelensky, on the morning of September 22nd, met in private with the then House Speaker Kevin McCarthy before making his way to the old Senate chamber. The Democrats wanted, for their part, to understand where the war was headed and how badly Ukraine needed support. They asked me straight up, if we don't give you aid, what happens? Zelensky recalls. What happens is, we lose.
So let me just, there was a single sentence that summed it all up, and I'm quoting him verbatim. Mr. Zelensky said, if we don't get the aid, we will lose the war. That's a quote.
Was there pushback from
By the time Zelensky returned to Kiev, the cold of early fall has taken hold.
As cold weather sets in Ukraine, Russia's airstrikes carry a new threat.
And his aides rushed to prepare for the second winter of the invasion. Russian attacks on infrastructure have damaged power stations and parts of the electrical grid, leaving it potentially unable to meet the spikes in demand when the temperature drops. Three of the senior officials in charge for dealing with this problem told me blackouts would likely be more severe this winter, and the public reaction in Ukraine would not be as forgiving. Last year, people blamed the Russians, one of them says. This time, they blame us for not doing enough to prepare. The cold will also make military advances more difficult, locking down the front lines until the spring. But Zelensky has refused to accept that. Freezing the war to me means losing it, he says. One of his aides said to expect a major shakeup in the president's team, as at least one minister would need to be fired, along with a senior general in charge of the counteroffensive. This was necessary, they said, to ensure accountability for Ukraine's slow progress at the front. We are not moving forward, says one of Zelensky's close aides. Some frontline commanders have begun refusing orders to advance, even when they came directly from the office of the president. They just want to sit in the trenches and hold the line, he says. But we cannot win a war that way. At one point in early October, the political leadership demanded an operation to retake Horlivka, a strategic outpost in eastern Ukraine. The answer came back in the form of a question. With what? They don't have the men or the weapons, says an officer. Where are the weapons? Where is the artillery? Where are the new recruits? In some branches of the military, the shortage of personnel has become even more dire than the deficit in arms and ammunition. One of Zelensky's close aides tells me that even if the US and its allies come through with all the weapons they have pledged, we don't have the men to use them. Since the start of the invasion, Ukraine has refused to release official counts of dead and wounded. But according to US estimates, the toll has long passed 100,000 on each side of the war.
Я старшина второй статьи Шалимов Олег Николаевич, 1963 года рождения, доброволец, 35-я бригада, 3-й батальон, 1-я штурмовая группа 8-й роты, позывной «Балтика». Хочу обратиться к депутатам и президенту нашей страны. Господа депутаты, вы приняли закон, по которому семья без вести пропавшего военнослужащего не имеет права на получение компенсационных выплат. Хотя есть свидетели, что боец погиб. Причина, по которой становится без вести пропавший, неграмотное, непрофессиональное планирование штурмовой операции, в результате чего при отступлении под минометным огнем только теоретически можно вынести тело. А если прямое попадание снаряда, когда от человека вообще ничего не остается, тогда как быть?
It has eroded the ranks of Ukraine's armed forces so badly that draft officers have been forced to call up ever older personnel, raising the average age of a Ukrainian soldier to around 43 years old. Recruitment is now way down as conscription efforts have intensified around the country. Videos are spreading on social media of draft officers pulling men off trains and buses and sending them to the front. Those with means sometimes bribe their way out of service, often by paying for medical intervention. Such episodes of corruption in the recruitment system became so widespread by the end of summer that on August 11th, Zelensky fired the heads of the draft officers in every region of the country. In recent months, the issue of corruption has strained Zelensky's relationship with many of his allies. As news of the scandal spread, the president gave direct orders to his staff to avoid the slightest perception of self-enrichment. Don't buy anything. Don't take vacations. Just sit at your desk, be quiet, and work, one staffer says, characterizing these directives. So with the alternative of losing the war or freezing it, Zelensky sees no options but to press on through the winter and beyond. I don't think Ukraine can allow itself to get tired of the war, he says. Even if someone gets tired on the inside, a lot of us don't admit it.